Hello everyone, my name is Taylor, if you didn't know that, and welcome to my first ever podcast episode. I'll be honest and say I had no clue I'd actually start this script off that I've written, that I'm reading off right now, and I kind of just sat there with an empty document for ages, so in the end I just decided to just be honest and say I had no clue what the fuck to say. But anyway, today what I want to do, and kind of have to do, is talk about a music album which I think had a large impact on the music industry. And the album that I'll be covering today is Hybrid Theory, Linkin Park's debut album. Personally, I think it's their best album that they've made, although I haven't heard all of them, so I can't say for sure. I haven't really heard anything they've made past around 2012, 2013, something like that, I don't know. Nonetheless, Hybrid Theory is their first album produced and released to the world, and I'll be talking through all the interesting bits behind this creation with you. First, let's talk about how the band actually formed. So the group's roots trace back to the high school friendship of Mike Shinoda and Brad Delson. Shinoda is the group's rapping co-vocalist and Delson is their group's guitarist. Goddamn. Their influences were quite diverse, Mike being a hip-hop fan, and Brad being influenced by bands such as Deftones and Guns N' Roses. Somewhere between their two styles, they found a quite satisfying blend, and formed the group originally called Zero, spelled with an X. I've no clue how to pronounce that, so I'm just going to call it Zero. They formed with their drummer, Rob Bornan, their turntablist Joe Hann, their bass player Dave Farrell, and their vocalist Mark Wakefield. Although if you know the band well, you know this wasn't the final cast of the band, because things didn't really seem to click with Mark Wakefield, and they eventually decided to part ways with him. And around the same time, their bassist Farrell also got another gig playing for a different band called Tasty Snacks, so they seemed to hit a bit of a roadblock quite quickly. Enter Jeff Blue, the vice president of Zomba Music, who was aware of the group and felt it had some potential. He helped the group search for a new vocalist, introducing the band to Chester Bennington, the Phoenix-based vocalist from Grey Days. Chester got the call during a surprise birthday party in 1999 and received a package from Jeff with 2 demos from the group. One of them included Wakefield's vocals and the other track was just an instrumental. A few days later, Bennington had recorded his vocals and sent the demos back to Jeff, which resulted in an audition 2 days later. I'll play the demo version of one of these tracks, that being In the End.
Starts with one, multiplies till you can taste the sun, and burned by the sky you try to take it from. But if it falls, there's no place to run, crumbling down, it's so unreal. They're dealing you in to determine your end, and sending you back again to places you've been, and bending your will till it breaks you within, and still they feel.
You can tell the idea for the song was already there, but with Chester's vocals added to it, I don't know how to describe it, it just makes the song so much better, and you can probably understand. Bennington's audition turned out so strong, but the other vocalists that were there to audition didn't even pick up the bloody microphone. They just left to try it instead because Chester just blew out the park. And with Bennington now in place, the band was formed, and they renamed their band Hybrid Theory. In Delson's own words, he really was kind of the final piece of the puzzle, and he brings vocal talent that, when we were looking for a second vocalist, we didn't see anything close to his talent in anybody else. The band began making their material together, even producing a demo tape, but a few problems still rose. The band had to change their group name again due to a Welsh electronic band named Hybrid, so they then took the title Linkin Park, which is obviously what we know them as now. The band played a number of showcases over the next year, but it had come down to Jeff Blue to land them their move over to Warner Brothers. The band then settled in Synology Studios in North Hollywood, California, ready to record their debut effort. Pharrell at the time was still away on tour during the studio recording process, so the band called up Scott Koziel, something like that, and Ian Hornbeck to lay down on the bass, with Delson adding some low end himself. Pharrell would later rejoin the band when they would tour the album, but he does not actually appear on the recording of the album. That was long, I'm so sorry everyone. Now let's talk a bit more about the actual album and the songs on it. The album is composed of 12 tracks and it clocks in at around 38 minutes. Hybrid Theory tackles subjects in human connection, it's dripping with angst and heartache, but it's also masterfully filled with pleasing hooks and ringworms. An easy way to imagine this combination would be to headbang along with tears in your eyes. We were a young band, so we didn't have any clout to say. We're doing it our way. There's a lot of pressure by outside forces to confront to where I was working at the time, but our vision was distinctly different from everything else. There were other bands combining these styles of music that we were, but not in the way that we wanted to, and we weren't going to bend our vision or water it down in any way. That is another quote by Brad Delson. Despite initial difficulties in finding a producer willing to take charge of the debut album of a newly signed band, Don Gilmore ultimately agreed to head up the project with Andy Wallace hired as the mixer. Recording sessions, which mostly involved re-recording of the songs from demo tapes, began at NRG Recordings in March 2000 and lasted around 4 months. Shinoda's rapping sections and most of the song were significantly altered from the original demos, while most of the choruses remained quite largely unchanged. The Dust Brothers provided additional beats for the track With You. Bennington and Shinoda wrote the lyrics of Hybrid Theory based in part of early demos with Mark Makefield. Shinoda characterized the lyrics as interpretations of universal feelings, emotions, and experiences, and as everyday emotions you talk and think about, in his own words. Bennington later described the songwriting experience to Rolling Stone in early 2002. It's easy to fall into that kind of thing, poor me. That's where songs like Crawling came from. I can't take myself, but that song is taking responsibility for your actions. I don't say you at any point. It's about how I'm the reason that I feel this way. There's something inside me that pulls me down. My personal favourite track on the album is A Place for My Head. The song's original title was Isau, something like that, which was actually the name of Wakefield's roommate that the band used to hang around with back when they were called Zero. The song itself was also written by Wakefield. A Place for My Head was one of the demos Chester had received from Jeff Blue when he was originally introduced to the band, and it included Wakefield's vocals on that track. The song itself was heavily influenced by the band Deftones, which was one of Mark's favourite bands at the time. Mike Shinoda noted that he wouldn't have written a song like A Place for My Head if not for them. There was a bounce to their music that reminded me of my favourite hip-hop songs, and even though the guitars were super heavy, oftentimes they felt smooth like a keyboard, as if the distortion had flattened it so much it was just a wash of chords. I'll play a bit of the track for you now.
Sits in the sky on a dark night, shining with the light from the sun. The sun doesn't give light to the moon, assuming the moon's gonna owe it one. It makes me think of how you act to me. You do favors there rapidly. You just turn around and start asking me about things that you want back from me. I'm sick of the tension, sick of the hunger, sick of you acting like I owe you this. Find another place to feed your greed while I find a place to rest. I wanna be in another place. I hate when you say you don't understand.
And here is a little bit of stuff on how the album actually performed. Hybrid Theory debuted at number 16 on the US Billboard 200, selling 50,000 copies in its first week. It was then certified gold by the Record Industry Association of America, RIAA, 5 weeks after its release. In 2001, the album had sold 4.8 million copies in the United States. Why did I say it like that? In 2001, the album had sold 4.8 million copies in the United States, making it the best-selling album of the year, and it was estimated that the album continued selling 100,000 copies per week in early 2002. In 2001, the album was the best-selling album globally, selling 8.5 million copies, and to date, the album has sold around 27 million copies worldwide, which makes it the best-selling debut album of the 21st century. I couldn't find anything about copyright claims or legal trouble surrounding the songs on this album while doing some research for it, so I'm just going to assume there are no issues with the album and its distribution. And just before we close this up, I would just like to dedicate a small section to the end towards the remembrance of Chester Bennington. Chester left us sadly on July 20th, 2017 at the age of 41, and Chester's work was driven deeply by his internal struggles. He battled issues with alcohol and drug abuse, and has spoken sometimes in interviews about being a victim of child abuse. He was born in Phoenix, Arizona on March 20th, 1976, and was raised by his mother, a nurse, and his detective father who investigated child abuse cases, until his parents divorced and his father gained custody of him. His childhood was quite troubled, suffering sexual abuse from an older male friend from the age of 7 until he was about 13. Chester turned to drugs, including opium, amphetamine, and cocaine in the wake of the divorce, and was physically bullied at school. He said, "I was knocked around like a rag doll at school. for being skinny and looking different. He took solace in artist works such as poetry, drawing and writing songs, and in the music of Depeche Mode and Stone Temple Pilots. Bennington was found in his Palos Verdes state home in California from an apparent suicide. He sadly left behind a wife and 6 children. Rest in peace, Chester. Your memory will live on in the heart of millions. And after that depressing note, I'm going to call it a wrap there. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, though I'd be quite surprised if you did, to be frank. This has been Taylor speaking. Have a lovely day, whoever and wherever you are.